Every growing business eventually reaches the same point. You become more dependent on technology, more dependent on SaaS platforms, more dependent on digital payments, vendors, AI tools, and distributed operations. And at the exact same time, your exposure expands. Not because your business is failing, but because growth creates structural complexity. Most organizations don't realize it until something breaks. A compromised account, a payment issue, a ransomware event, a vendor outage, a cloud dependency failure, an employee clicking the wrong link, an AI workflow making the wrong decision at scale. And suddenly, what looked like a technical issue becomes a business disruption. Revenue slows, operations stall. Recovery takes longer than expected. Leadership loses visibility. Clients begin asking questions. That's the environment modern businesses operate in. And for many small and medium businesses, the challenge is not a lack of effort or intelligence. It's that the business often scales faster than the underlying structure supporting it. That's the problem Sentinel Ridge Advisory was built to solve. Sentinel Ridge Advisory is built on decades of executive leadership experience across highly regulated and mission-critical industries. From financial services and healthcare to energy, technology, and government, we help organizations identify structural risk, strengthen operational resilience, and align security strategy to real business objectives. Our experience spans cybersecurity, governance, compliance, and enterprise risk management supported by recognized standards, including CISF, HIPAA, CCPA, and NIST. At Sentinel Ridge Advisory, we bring practical expertise, strategic perspective, and proven risk reduction impact to organizations navigating an increasingly complex digital environment. Sentinel Ridge Advisory was built on a simple belief. Cyber resilience starts with structure. We help organizations identify risk early, prioritize what matters most, and build practical defenses that protect revenue, operations, and long-term growth. Our approach is intelligence-led, measurable, and designed to strengthen resilience before disruption occurs. Historically, cybersecurity conversations focused heavily on perimeter defense, firewalls, endpoint protection, threat detection, blocking malicious activity. And those things still matter. But the reality is that modern organizations now operate inside highly interconnected digital ecosystems. Most cybersecurity firms focus on alerts, tools, and compliance checklists. Sentinel Ridge takes a different approach. The SSRI identifies the structural risks that attackers actually exploit, the hidden weaknesses across identity, platforms, vendors, payments, governance, and operational design. We assess, analyze, score, and prioritize the risks, creating the greatest exposure. Then provide a clear path towards stronger cyber resilience, operational stability, and long-term protection. The SSRI assessment is only the beginning. Once structural risks are identified, Sentinel Ridge helps organizations move from insight to execution through a phased resilience strategy. From governance and policy improvements to strategic risk roadmaps, third-party exposure hardening through CASEX, and ongoing advisory support, we help reduce exposure, protect revenue, strengthen trust, and build long-term operational resilience as your business scales. It's no longer simply, can we detect threats? In many environments, detection is already getting dramatically faster because of automation and AI. The new question is, what happens after disruption occurs? How far does the impact spread? How quickly can the organization recover? How much operational resilience exists beneath the surface? That's where structure matters. Two organizations can experience the exact same cyber event and have completely different outcomes. One organization absorbs the disruption, contains the issue, restores operations, and moves forward. The other experiences prolonged downtime, client disruption, payment delays, reputational damage, operational confusion, financial stress. And the difference is often not the sophistication of the attack itself. It's the structure of the business, how access is governed, how financial approvals are managed, how recovery responsibilities are defined, how dependent the organization is on key systems or vendors, how quickly leadership can make informed decisions under pressure. Most businesses don't intentionally design fragility into their operations. For modern businesses, cybersecurity failures are no longer isolated technical events. They become operational, financial, and reputational crises. A single compromise can disrupt revenue, damage customer trust, trigger investor concerns, and create long-term business instability. Sentinel Ridge helps organizations identify structural exposure before it becomes impact, strengthening resilience so growth is protected, not interrupted. One of the biggest shifts happening right now is that cybersecurity and operational maturity are increasingly becoming commercial differentiators. Customers, partners, investors, and enterprise buyers are evaluating more than whether an organization has security tooling. They're evaluating operational maturity, governance, discipline, recovery, confidence, resilience, capability, business continuity, readiness. Organizations that can confidently answer those questions are building trust faster. The ones that cannot are increasingly encountering friction. That's especially true as AI adoption accelerates. Because the more dependent businesses become on digital workflows, the more important structural resilience becomes. The creator and founder economy is scaling at unprecedented speed, projected to exceed $500 billion globally within the next few years. But resilience is not keeping pace. 68% of SMBs still lack a formal cybersecurity strategy, and only 16% believe their cyber readiness is highly effective. At the same time, attacks against small and mid-sized businesses continue accelerating, with 95% of breaches still tied to human error, weak controls, or social engineering. The structural gap is growing, and attackers are exploiting it at scale. The AI threat landscape has fundamentally changed. Mythos Glass large language models have dramatically lowered the barrier to sophisticated cyber attacks, enabling phishing, impersonation, reconnaissance, and fraud at unprecedented scale. Today, over 90% of cyber attacks involve AI-enhanced techniques, while 87% of breaches still begin with credential abuse and identity compromise. At the same time, deepfake-enabled fraud has tripled, and the average SMB breach now exceeds $5 million in impact. Attackers are scaling faster than most businesses can adapt, which is why structural cyber resilience has become critical. Attackers no longer target businesses based on size, they target accessible revenue. Founder-led organizations often operate with centralized access, informal vendor relationships, concentrated payment flows, and limited cyber readiness. That creates structural exposure attackers can exploit at scale through AI-enabled automation, credential abuse, fraud, and social engineering. The risk is no longer theoretical. Revenue itself has become the attack surface. Sentinel Ridge Advisory delivers a full proprietary cyber resilience framework built for founders, creators, and growing businesses. CASEX, the Creator Application Security Exposure, identifies third-party exposure across platforms, payment systems, and creator or small business ecosystems. Our Sentinel Structural Risk Index, or SSRI, quantifies structural cyber risk across the business and prioritizes what matters most. Governance and policy review strengthens internal controls, access, discipline, and operational resilience. The Strategic Risk Roadmap turns findings and existing strategic initiatives into a phased execution plan aligned to growth. And our advisory services provide ongoing guidance to help businesses adapt, mature, and scale securely over time, partnering with businesses for long-term success. The SSRI evaluates how business structure amplifies or contains disruption. The SSRI was designed around a simple idea. Disruption is inevitable. What determines survivability is structure. The framework evaluates 5 core domains: revenue concentration, how dependent is the organization on a small number of customers, engagements, or revenue streams; recovery readiness, how quickly can operations stabilize after disruption; identity and access governance, who has access to critical systems, and how controlled is that access; treasury governance, how protected are financial processes, payment approvals, and cash movement; vendor and operational dependency, how exposed is the organization to third-party platforms, SaaS providers, and external operational dependencies. These domains are interconnected. Weakness in one area often amplifies weakness in another. That's why the SSRI does not focus solely on technical controls. It evaluates how the business itself behaves under stress. CASX helps founders and creators secure the third-party ecosystems their businesses depend on every day. We assess social platforms, payment processors, cloud collaboration tools, marketing systems, and integrated applications to identify configuration gaps. Attackers exploit. The goal is simple: protect revenue, preserve credibility, reduce downtime, and strengthen cyber resilience across the entire business ecosystem. Strong cyber resilience requires more than tools, it requires structure and governance. Our governance and policy review evaluates access controls, administrative privileges, policy discipline, vendor oversight, and operational accountability to identify the gaps attackers exploit. The outcome is a clear maturity assessment, prioritized improvements, and a practical roadmap that strengthens control, compliance, readiness, and long-term business resilience. The strategic risk roadmap transforms assessment findings into a clear execution strategy. We help organizations prioritize the risks that matter most, align resources and budgets, implement phased controls, and measure progress over time. The objective is not just short-term remediation, it's building operational resilience that supports sustainable growth and long-term business confidence. Most importantly, the recommendations are designed to align with how the business actually operates. We understand that SMBs need practical guidance. The goal is not to overwhelm organizations with complexity. The goal is to introduce the right structure in the right places so the business becomes more resilient as it grows. If your organization is growing, if you are increasing your use of SaaS platforms, AI tools, and digital operations, if more of your revenue depends on technology functioning reliably every day, then structure matters. The question is no longer whether disruption will occur. The question is, how far will it spread? How quickly can recovery happen? How dependent is the business on founder knowledge, informal processes, or fragile operational assumptions? And ultimately, is the business structured to absorb disruption or amplify it? That's the conversation we help organizations have. At Sentinel Ridge Advisory, we help businesses identify structural exposure before disruption becomes operational and financial impact. Not through fear, not through generic checklists, but through practical, business-aligned resilience strategy designed for how modern organizations actually operate. If that conversation would be valuable for your organization, we'd be happy to connect. Sentinel Ridge Advisory, helping businesses reduce structural risk before disruption becomes business impact. Start by getting your risk snapshot score today. Protect your revenue. Protect your reputation.